bring you greetings from our General Minister and President, John Dorhauer, our Executive for Wider Church Ministries, Reverend Jim Mose, and our Executive for Justice and Local Church Ministries, Reverend Tracy Blackman, along with my supervisor, who some of you may know, Reverend Mike Schoonemeyer, who's the Executive for Health and Wholeness Advocacy. So we have a whole lot of support about this collaboration from the United Church of Christ. I'm here today because of this person over here. And JP and I did some work together around, well, we met at a United Church of Christ function and immediately connected around our collaborative work around sexuality education, around comprehensive sexuality education, and around the faith components of that. And the United Church of Christ has a partnership with the Unitarian Universalist Association, which also includes the Canadian Unitarian Council. So in North America, this Our Whole Lives program is developed and shepherded, if you will, by those denominations. And it is a lifespan curriculum. It starts at, as JP was saying, around age 4. We have modules for that all the way up through this summer will be released Our Whole Lives for older adults. That actual sexuality education curriculum is secular. However, each particular model has a manual that accompanies it called Sexuality and Our Faith. And at the present time, what is published is in those Sexuality and Our Faith manuals are divided in half. And the first half goes workshop by workshop in each of the Our Whole Lives workshops and brings in Unitarian Universalist principles and support for what is taught from a faith perspective. And the second half brings in a United Church of Christ perspective on scripture, prayer, litany, psalm, those kinds of things, all of which are developed to support all of the things that are provided in the secular part of the curriculum. So it's a marriage, if you will, of those two things. And it's unique in that way because in many places, and this isn't only true in the US, but in many places, comprehensive sexuality education is kind of a secular type of thing. So this idea of bringing in the faith component has been really transformational in my experience. And it sets it apart from other sexuality education, especially in North America. So we have this tool, and it's been around since the late 90s, and we're in the process of revising material now because we need it to be more up to date. And we thought, this is a thing that we do in North America, but what happened was people have become interested. And at the training that JP was at, we actually had people from the Philippines. We had people from the Caribbean area and Trinidad. So we have this international interest in what we're doing. And so last year, almost exactly a year ago, we went to Tanzania. JP and I were invited in a collaboration between the ELCT and Church of Sweden to go and to do an Our Whole Lives training. There were people from a group about this size from 2 different dioceses in the ELCT and many religious leaders and educators and folks working in the field in the room. And when we began that 3-day process, we said, what are your expectations? And people said, we don't really know why we're here. What does sexuality and what does faith have to do with sexuality? How can we possibly connect these things? These are 2 completely different things. It's such important work for us as people of the church because there's a justice component. And we need to walk together with people who are marginalized. We need to walk together with people who are survivors of sexual assault. And as the church, this is an important part of us to embrace the diversity of creation and to realize that is part of our faith and our faith work. So it was really quite transformational and went so well. And we had known when we went in that, please, I'm just talking now, so you can make it go. We knew when we went in that we wanted to amplify the faith component. And so we did that, and it was really transformational for folks and for us as well. And so then we left Tanzania. I'm still connected via social media with several of the folks there, and they tell us that the training, even if they aren't using, each of the modules of the curriculum that we have, that the training really gave them language to go back into their communities and the places where they were working, and to be able to explain this connection and have different types of conversations around sexuality and faith, which is huge, so huge in this work, because there's so much stigma around it. And then it isn't only in Tanzania, right? Because here we were up north in Harnosand earlier or last week, and we had people from many different places in the world, but many here in Sweden, and we were having the same conversation. We were having the same conversation of, can you call what we do comprehensive sexuality education, or do we need to call it something else so that we can have an entry point to get the information to people? How do we work together? How do secular organizations and faith-based organizations work together? And there is this assumption that there's this huge divide, when in reality there isn't. So that's the work I think that JP and I engage in the most, is to help people realize that instead of a big chasm, there's actually many opportunities to provide bridges between faith-based organizations and secular organizations, to have these conversations, and to do it in ways that are very practical, and give life-saving and transformational information to people. And as I was here in my hometown in Washington State, in the United States, there was a town hall going on with our local state legislators. And one of the new state legislators that represents the area where I live, in a fairly progressive state in the US, had introduced into the legislature a bill to make comprehensive sexuality education mandatory in the schools in our state. It's now, the law says if you're going to offer it, it should be comprehensive and inclusive, and so people do offer it, but it's very hit or miss in terms of quality, and is it actually comprehensive and is actually inclusive is very, very hit or miss. And so they had this town hall meeting, and people showed up. There was a former state legislator who dubbed this legislation the Child Sexual Indoctrination Bill, and got all these people to come, and he had stirred up all this fear and all this misinformation about what this was about. And these people showed up, and they were rude, and they brought their children, and they were cursing, and they were doing ridiculous things to disrupt this town hall meeting. And what that tells me is that this issue is everywhere. This issue is everywhere. And so the ways that we can find, if there are tools that we have that we can share with each other, or that are useful with each other, to train religious leaders, to come together, to find practical ways to offer information. And it can't only be with adults. It has to start with children, or we have to find a way to bring children in, because that's where the change is going to happen. If we have children and families involved and having conversations, I think we'll see a different type of systemic change in attitudes, because that's where the fear is being pointed at.